Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Spiritus Walking. Tonight's episode is about divine intervention. I asked followers, viewers, fans to email me and share some of their experiences. I want this series to be interactive, and I definitely got a response from, has anybody had any divine intervention situations? So tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on some of the letters that I got, and I'm going to read those to you and let you decide whether you believe divine intervention is in fact possible. My goal not only is for interaction, but to force you to critically think and to bring into the spotlight things that need to be brought into the spotlight. And divine intervention had an overwhelming response. So that tells me, based on statistical analysis, that the majority of individuals believe that divine intervention is in fact real and is possible. Last night there was a blog post, my blog post, kind of defining divine intervention, and that's not what I'm going to do here tonight. I'm going to share things tonight from other people. You've heard enough from me and about what my belief systems are and what has happened to me. So let's talk about what other people have experienced. 9 times out of 10, divine intervention is defined as a deity or a god having a direct impact in your life, whether it be a life or death situation, whether it be a decision that you need to make. There are all kinds of different belief parameters around divine intervention. And I will tell you that the research that I've done shows that it exists across every religion. It is not limited to Christianity. And I am not going to present this as a solely Christian perspective. A lot of the feedback I got was Christian perspective. But it's not limited to Christianity. There are other religions and other cultures and other belief systems that exist that truly believe that divine intervention is happening and is possible. So tonight's episode is going to be from the perspective of others. And some of these people have actually written their experiences in like a small short story type thing. So here goes. And also all of the readers' information is going to remain anonymous. And I will try to redact as much as I can for the identity of the person who submitted. In some cases that's not possible because they provide a lot of detail, but I am not going to reveal names on who messaged me and who didn't. And I am going to tell you that I did focus efforts on information received outside of my direct family. I know the experiences of my direct family, and that's fine. But I needed to know what other people had experienced. I don't want to just share what my perspectives are and what my family's perspectives are. That's not fair to everyone. So I'm focusing more on people that have contacted me. And I want to start with there is a short story called The Traveler. And I'm going to read it to you as it was written to me. It says, what is 2 times plus 3 times? And I asked the class, 2x plus 3x, my fault. I asked the class, 5x to the second power, replied a mistaken student named Charlie. His buddy Aaron corrected him, no, it's 5x. Good, Aaron, I said. I explained that x times x is x to the second power, but x plus x is just 2x. I asked the class if you had an x in your hand and someone gave you another X, what would you have? You two X's. At that moment, a strange man appeared in the doorway to my classroom. I say strange, meaning we did not know him, but also strange in another sense. It's not often that a man appears in my classroom doorway, not dressed professionally and not accompanied by an administrator. His very short stature and balding salt and pepper hair, combined with his red and white mottled facial skin and somewhat enlarged bulbous nose, immediately reminded me of my father. My father had died several years earlier. The writer goes on to mention her children, and they called her dad Poppy. And almost everyone called him Poppy. And the strange man made her instantly think of her Poppy. School policy states that anyone entering the high school building must immediately report to the office and state their business in writing, being approved for that business, and receive a visitor's badge pass. I saw no pass, so I knew he had not been to the office. At that point, I was supposed to inform him that he must report to the office and state his business. I did not. I guess because it seemed rude and impersonal to do so. He had a cute grin on his aged face that just endeared me to him, even though he was a total stranger. It just didn't feel right to tell this man to go to the office. So I stopped teaching, approached him smiling, and said, "Hi, can I help you?" "Well, I hope so. I'd like to ask you a question if you have time. It's a math problem," he said. He gestured toward the book in his hand, and I saw that what I had thought was a notebook was a math textbook, a paperback the same size as a notebook. I was in the middle of teaching a lesson, but something prompted me to just stop and help this man. I said, "I will certainly try. What do you have there?" He told me he was taking a college class and he couldn't figure out a particular problem. I invited him in to sit at a trapezoid-shaped table up front as I told the class I would be just a minute. I think the class was as curious as I, because they became very quiet, as if they did not want to miss a word of what was said. I sat down at the table with the man, and he offered his hand for me to shake, and he said, "They call me the Traveler." I shook his small yet slightly chunky hand as I smiled and told him my name, and I'm not going to reveal the name. His eyes twinkled as if meeting me made him happy. He proceeded to ask me the math questions. I drew pictures and formulas on the piece of paper as I explained how to work the problems, and he listened intently. And when he finished, we both arose, and he thanked me profusely for my help. He kept telling me how very nice I was to help him and how much he appreciated it. I have to tell you, it seemed a little weird. I mean, this man just did not look or act like someone that would be taking a college course. He was obviously older. He looked to me in his 50s, and he was dressed somewhat shabbily. He reminded me so much of my father, Poppy. My father was a wonderful man, but he was also an alcoholic. He was one of those kinds of alcoholics that wouldn't hurt a fly. His alcoholism hurt our family, but I know he didn't want to be that way. The Traveler was short like Poppy. Poppy was only 5'4". The Traveler looked like an alcoholic with his red and white mottled skin and bulbous nose. And he had full round face like Poppy and balding salt and pepper hair like Poppy. His mannerisms were even like Poppy's. Okay, and then she goes on to say that 2 days later, the Traveler suddenly appeared in the doorway again. Again, she did not send him away. She stopped the class and invited him back into the table. Once more, she felt the eerily the connection to this man and an endearment. She was thanked for her kindness, and again, the resemblance was like her father. The next 2 days, I thought about the traveler and my father a lot. Then he appeared in my doorway a third time. This time was somewhat different, however. He handed me an envelope and simply said, "This is for you because of the kindness you showed me. You're a very special person." When he said that, I saw the twinkle in his eyes that said he was proud of me. Without opening the envelope, I thanked him, and he was gone. I have chills. I don't know why, but I have chills all down my back. After he left, I stood, because I will tell you, this is the first time I've read this. I've not pre-read any of what I'm sharing with you. And we may not be able to get to all of them this evening, but I'm certainly going to try. After he left, I stood in front of the class and opened the envelope. I think the students were as curious as I, as they sat in total silence. I pulled out a card from the envelope and opened it. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at the words at the top of the card. The traveler had written, "To a wonderful girl." The handwriting looked exactly like Poppy's. She's crying now, which I can definitely see why. And it was signed, "The Traveler." Inside were 3 gift certificates, each worth 1 buffet meal at the Golden Corral. I believe the traveler was an angel. I believe it was my father that found a way to visit me. I have 2 children. It's just myself and my 2 kids. However, how did he know to get 3 gift certificates, exactly the number that I needed? Thinking back to our first encounter, how did he know to come to me with his math question? There were many, many rooms of teachers in this building. How did he know that I was the math teacher? No one's name is the Traveler. But what an appropriate name for an angel. I have chills. I'm sorry. We never saw him after that. He just disappeared. No one had ever heard of him before, and no one ever heard of him after. I don't know the purpose of the angel's visit to me. I do know, however, that I was glad that I had been nice to the traveler and tried to help him. It made me want to show kindness to others more often. Isn't that what life is about? Nothing is more fulfilling than knowing that you've helped someone else, that you've been kind and made a good connection between yourself and another soul. The more good connections you make, the happier you become. This one encounter with the traveler influenced my life greatly. It made me aware of the power of kindness. If you don't believe it, just try it. Try showing kindness to others every chance you get. Look for ways to be helpful. Go out of your way to help someone. What you will find is that you are the one that you've helped the most. She goes on to say that she found inner peace and happiness. And she mentions a scripture, Hebrews 13:2. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. Wow. Profound. I'm going to platform off of that. Even though that was a simple instance of someone coming into someone else's life, she needed help right then. She was a single mother of 2, and I know her personally. And I remember her. And she was a single mom, making it on her salary with 2 children to feed. And although it was a tiny gesture of here's a gift certificate, it was enough to satisfy the need that she had at that time. So it doesn't have to be a life or death situation where divine intervention is involved. It can involve something that you need. Or, for example, just now we were driving home, we're expecting an ice storm. Now this is pre-recorded, so we're in the beginning of February. We're expecting an ice storm. And I went to the eye doctor, which is about 45 minutes from where I live. We stopped at one of the local grocery store, Kroger grocery store. It was packed. I couldn't find a place to park. So I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm thinking, okay, I'll just go back to my hometown and I'll go to Kroger there. As soon as I entered my hometown, something said, no, go to this grocery store, which is a very local grocery store. They're very expensive, but they are locally owned and operated. And I thought, okay, I will. And I found everything I needed there. Simple things like that you don't think about each day. All it takes is listening to that still small voice. And I completely agree with this writer. There have been instances that I know that I came into contact with an angel. I was 12 years old. I was in a church. I was practicing for a play. A very tattered gentleman walked into the back of the room. And it was snowing outside. It was cold. And he looked very sad. And he said, I need help. My wife and I are out in the car, and we need to know where to go. And I'm paraphrasing because I can remember some of it, but not all of it. And the director of the play said, we're trying to practice here. I don't know how to help you, basically was what he said. The lead actor hit the ground running. The guy was already out the door. We saw no headlights out in the parking lot, nothing. The lead actor hit the ground running, went to the back of the church, opened the back of the church doors, came back in, and he was in tears. There was no one out front. No one. No one in the parking lot, no tracks in the snow. He disappeared. And the lead actor said, we just failed the test. And we most certainly did. I don't know who that test was for, but we failed because we were presented with a divine entity that asked us for help as a human being, and we turned him away. What test did we fail? That's always been a thought in my mind. What were we supposed to have learned from that angelic encounter that we failed to learn? And the director took it upon himself to blame himself and said, it was for me. I don't know that that's true, but you know when someone or something is trying to get through to you. Okay, on to the next one. This is from someone also that I've known personally throughout my life. And she goes on to explain that she was in a car wreck about 26 years ago, and it should have been much worse. No damage to her, but I can't say that much for the car because it was totaled. I should have had glass in my face, but the window was not broken. I couldn't open my door, but from the inside you did not see that damage. I had to crawl over the front seat to the other side to get out of the car. Lucky, I feel my faith was not in the car or the guy who hit me, who didn't have insurance, but in the one who watches over us when we don't know we need to be watched over. So she is referencing that God looked out for her and spared her life, and that she truly believes in God as the entity that was involved in that situation. Okay. Next. Honestly, I feel like I have divine intervention daily, but that's because I spend a good bit of time listening to the voices, which I attribute to God and his higher workers. Although I do hear things that I would attribute to divine guidance from regular, and she spells it regular, people, but only when I'm very open. I think God talks to us all in lots of ways. We've just been taught for centuries that it isn't possible, so most tend to ignore it. I have found much more peace by listening. Okay, so here are the highlights that she goes into. And she goes into quite a bit. And like I said, I hope I get to all of these. If not, there'll be a second piece to this. I'll lead with the best. When I became single again at age 27, 28, I began doing what all good single girls do. I prayed every night for God to send me a man. Like an expectant mother, my list was long and specific, initially smart, kind, fun, loving. After 2.5 years without even a date, my list had somehow become, quote, God, please send me a man who will say, honey, the cab on this truck is awful big with you sitting over there. Why don't you slide over here by me, unquote. I never told anyone that, no one. My friends were lawyers, social workers, accountants, engineers. They would mock me. I kept praying that for over 1.5 years more. We were on our second date, and my now husband said exactly those words to me. I sputtered and finally got out, what did you say? He turned a little pink and repeated it, then asked if there was something wrong with that. Nope. But it was years before I told him why. We got engaged on a Tuesday, and my dad died very unexpectedly that Saturday. We got married almost 4 months later on the deck of my dad's house. My dad and stepmom had a cat that would hide when anyone but them was in the house, for any reason. When I went to feed the animals while they would vacation, I had to put the cat's food under the bed, because other than the litter box, that is where she stayed until they came home. The night of our wedding reception, Lucy not only came out from under the bed, she went from person to person, maybe 50 plus people, meeting, greeting, and talking, meowing. My stepmom looked at me and said, look, there's your dad. I knew that he'd make it. The cat never acted like that again till the end of her life. Okay, she's telling another story. Our daughter was about 18 months old and toddling around our home when she came to a picture of 2 of my best friends at their wedding. She said, Mama, Tweenie, got me wean. I said, yes. She said, Mama, Giles, and got me weed. Yes, baby, he did. Mama, 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 got me weed. And me and Papa Mike, we danced and we danced and we danced outside. My daughter and dad were never on this planet at the same time. In fact, she was conceived about a month or more after he died. We had actually found out about 3 weeks before the wedding that I didn't have kidney stones, but was in fact pregnant. There were also no pictures out from our wedding. I don't know why, there just weren't. So she had no information that we had given her, and she was 1.5 years old. But she and the dad never met, and she was able to recognize him. And those are their stories to that effect too. And then medical mysteries, introduction. My Uncle Arden, my Nana's youngest brother, he was a doctor and was one of my favorite people in the entire world, gone for 12 years, and he still is her favorite person. I worked in his office during college to help pay for the things my scholarship didn't cover. I believe he had a gift in his hands for healing medical energy. I watched him send patient after patient for medical procedures based on a diagnosis that he made by examination only, and have the doctor schedule them for a myriad of tests. And this was in the 70s and 80s. Outcome nearly every time, he was right. At age 21, I was at a follow-up to an optical surgical procedure to fix my sinuses when the doctor says, looks like you have enlarged thyroid. If you start having problems, let the doctor know. She goes back to her uncle, and she kind of mentions it in passing to him, and he tells her to hop up on the table. He gets behind her, does that thing that doctors do when they poke around on your neck. No more than a minute later, he says, go make yourself an appointment with a surgeon. That has to come out. I sputtered and said, but the other doctor said that all I had to do was watch it and maybe take some medicine at some point. He looks at her and says, "Whoever you want to listen to." So she makes the appointment with the surgeon, who refuses to schedule the surgery and basically calls her uncle a quack, in all fairness. So she goes to an endocrinologist who says that the uncle's very well respected, but that they don't think that there's anything to what's being said. So they do like a needle biopsy, and the lump doesn't collapse. If it's fluid, it's going to collapse, and it didn't. And they call 2 weeks later and tell her that they have bad news and that the lump is malignant and that she has to be scheduled for an emergency surgery. And let's see, they called within 10 minutes, as my uncle said, and all of a sudden they think it is an emergency. She's had breast problems. And they tell her that they'll do some tests before doing anything else, but your options are a brain tumor or stage 4 breast cancer. She goes to the mammogram and the ultrasound. Been there, done that, sister. And she's got 2 baby kids, 6 and 4. Okay. The text says to her, "Oh," in that sad, drawn-out way of expressing how tragic, before she catches herself and says something totally different on a different subject. Then says to the other tech when she gets behind the screen, because that thing is soundproof apparently, "See me roll my eyes. I thought her kids would be older. That will be so sad." So they already had the death certificate signed for her. So of course surgery is scheduled. Been there, done that. Prayers go up like crazy apparently all over the planet. My network of family and friends have begun praying, doing Reiki, which my friend is familiar with that, and I'm trying to get familiar with it, sending whatever they have. My best friend and her mother, both nurses, start figuring out how they can come take care of me during chemo from Western Kentucky and Dayton, Ohio, because she's in North Carolina. My husband's best friend says he'll shave his head with me when I start losing my hair. The nurses look at my test results and cry and pray. When the doctor removes it, it is not malignant. It is a blocked gland. I flash back to one of my uncle's favorite sayings. Honey, that's why they call it the practice of medicine. Wow. Then about a month later, I am at graduation of my best friend from the Air Force. And her mother sees me for the first time since it all happened. She comes walking across a heavy marbled hotel lobby, loudly proclaiming, "God worked a miracle in you, girl. God worked a miracle in you. Your final diagnosis didn't match your symptoms and your test results. He's got plans for you, girl. He's got plans for you." They go on to explain Sarah and her mom go about explaining to me that my end diagnosis couldn't have caused the initial symptoms and why. Wow. Wow. Okay. Next one. Let's see. He just turned 18 and he was the designated driver at a party. His best friend was drunk and riding with him. On their way home late, and it was raining out in the backwoods of West Virginia, he missed a sharp turn. His Jeep Cherokee went straight, hitting multiple trees along the way. Both boys were wearing seat belts. The Jeep came to a stop after flipping a couple of times, pinning between the 2 trees. The Jeep then caught fire. Both boys were unconscious. My brother had the gear shift going through his knee, and the fire was spreading. This road is not traveled often, but this night a guy who was knowledgeable in emergency care was driving by and broke my brother's window and unbuckled him and pulled him from the car. He then tried to do the same for his best friend, but the seatbelt was stuck and the Jeep started popping, and he never made it. Now my brother was out but had no pulse and was not breathing. He was successfully brought back, however, he was out of it. At the hospital, my mom sat at his bedside and spoke of heaven and how he was told it was not his time. He was just to relay a message of how peaceful it was. He also told my mom that it was nothing to fear. So it sounds like to me this gentleman had a near-death experience. We of course were glad he survived with serious third-degree burns and horrible breaks. But what my other brother and I see now, the message was from my mom. She had cancer at the time and didn't know it. She passed away unafraid and at peace less than a year later. So that sounds like a near-death experience to me. This one will be our final one. I hope there's enough time on here. I was in the darkest of places in my life. I can't honestly remember much about it because I was so depressed and so lost that I had no hope for what was left. I was cutting, I was burning, I was living in a world that no one would dare wish on their enemy. I can't put it more simply other than I say I had hit rock bottom. I remember sitting on my bed counting out the pills I had stolen and saved up in a little red candy cane jar my grandmother had gotten me 2 Christmases before. One by one I put each pill into a pile and separated them out by what type they were. Pink and blue and white and brown pills littered the top of my star and night sky printed sheets. Swallowing, I started to count each one in each pile and marked the count down in my notebook. I opted for silence, keeping the music and the computer off and only listening to the noises of my mother upstairs as she moved around the house and the dogs as they came in and out of the garage, their nails clipping on the hardwood floors I hadn't wanted. I finished the count and added up my total, 133 pills of various nature. 133 pills that would end my life. I bit my lip and stared down at them, trying my hardest not to count them again for good measure. I was nervous, but there was no way I was going to be swayed from killing myself. Yes, I would be a murderer in the eyes of God, and yes, my mother would suffer because of what I had done, but I had no other options. Sliding my hand through all the pills, I mixed their colors and kinds. I put them back into the candy cane ceramic holder and walked into the basement bathroom. Setting the holder onto the vanity that I had spent hours painting, I reached down into the cabinet and pulled out the bleach. I slowly made my way upstairs with empty hands and grabbed a glass from the kitchen. Wow. Filling it with water to mask my purpose. I headed back down into the basement to do exactly what I had planned. Like I said, I've not read any of these. These are totally new to me too. With the cup of bleach on my nightstand and the pills once more strewn about my sheets, I took a deep breath. I knew it would be painful. I knew it wouldn't be quick or easy, but it was the only way I could think of doing it. It was the fastest and most effective method I had. My room was a mess, and a brief thought of cleaning it first came to my mind. That way my mom would have to go through less when I was gone. I started in the corner where the open closet was, and was easily distracted by the letters I had stashed there. Above the entrance on the inside of the closet was a small ledge where the frame was. I reached up on my tippy toes and pulled down the letters I had written to everyone who mattered and my obituary. I sat back on the bed and started to put them in order, laying them out in the way I wanted my mother to find them and read them. I crossed my legs and looked over my room once more, deciding there was No more reason to clean it. The glint broke into my mindless gaze. I didn't look anywhere else after that. I don't know how long it took, but I finally moved off the bed and grabbed the new adventure Bible I'd been given in 3rd grade. I sat back down, crossed my legs, and took a deep breath, running my fingers over the worn cover. I did the only thing I could think of and opened the cover, then the pages, and then started reading. I love the Lord because he has heard my voice and my supplications, because he inclined his ear to me. Therefore I will call on him as long as I live. The snares of death encompass me. The pangs of Sheol laid hold on me. I suffered distress and anguish. Then I called on the name of the Lord. O Lord, I pray, save my life. I read the entire psalm multiple times before I found myself crying. I picked up my pills, shoved them back into the red candy cane jar, and grabbed the glass of bleach. I headed to the bathroom and dumped the bleach down the drain before hiding the pills on the back of the shelf. I closed my Bible and set it on the nightstand before heading upstairs to watch television in silence with my mom. So she was going to kill herself, and she happened to grab her Bible. Again, this is a Christian perspective. It's not limited to Christianity. Divine intervention happens every day in big and small ways. So with that, I want to conclude and thank you so much for tuning in, and let you also know that the YouTube episodes have been condensed to once a month. I'm not really sure what the schedule is going to be at this point, but they are going to be once a month as opposed to twice a month. And I will get that schedule out as soon as possible on my website. If you have any topics that you'd like to discuss, please let me know. I will be happy to incorporate that into what we're doing. Also, and this comes out kind of late, but I will be co-hosting the Paranormal Hour with Willow Cross. I've already been hosting it by this time, the time that this film airs, but I am going to be hosting that with her twice a month, and that's why I'm condensing my YouTube episodes to once a month, because I can't juggle it all. But the co-hosting is an excellent opportunity, and I love Willow, so I'm happy to do it and happy to help. Again, if you have any questions, contact me. Other than that, love and light to you. Have a great day wherever you are. If it's cold where you are, stay warm. If it's warm, enjoy it, because it's awfully cold in Ohio. Have a great day. Bye.